You're listening to 5 Things with Lisa Birnbach.
Hi, it's Lisa Birnbach, and it's November. Holy cow, how did that happen? Well, soon the leaves will change color and make their way down the streets and clogging your gutters, and everything suddenly will be pumpkin spice if it isn't already, and you'll see orange everywhere. But don't worry, if orange doesn't look good on you, don't fret. Red and green are coming soon. There'll be something for everyone. But I do want to get to my list of 5 things in order to let my guest, author Jami Attenberg, have her time here. She is a very disciplined and prolific novelist, as you'll hear. Her newest book is All This Could Be Yours, and seriously, it could be your next great read. Here are my 5 things that make my life better this week. Numero uno. Pajamas like clothing and clothing like pajamas. Is it really such a stretch after athleisure has become what we wear all the time? I know people who wear leggings and sneakers to every level of thing they do. Dinner, drop off at school, meetings, and so on. And now there's all this stuff, all these clothes that designers are showing us that look like silk pajamas with piping and lapels. A friend of mine gave me a pair of green silk pajamas. You'll see my picture wearing them on the website at lisabirnbach.com. And you know what? It was extremely comfortable. I was just a little self-conscious. But why not? Pajamas to wear outside. The only thing is, someone needs to tell me what shoes are appropriate to go with silk pajamas. Number 2, forever stamps. Unlike most people I know, I still do frequent the post office, and I'm mailing packages to my exhibits, and I mail checks. Do you know what those are, kids? You can Google them to pay my credit card bills. And I sort of enjoy the stamps. They're like stickers, they're sticker fun. And by the way, in the dark ages of the 20th century, we had to lick them, and they did not taste good. So I really like the way we do it now. Plus, they're all called forever. So you don't have to worry, I need 3 cents. I need 2 more cents of stamps. That's fine. Number 3, lunch. Okay, this is not provocative, but I tend to spend a lot of time home alone. And when I'm home alone, I sometimes dwell on thoughts I shouldn't. And going out for lunch is a very good way to break up the day. It's a very good way to see people and get an exchange of ideas. And I like humans, and I get a good exchange of, dopamine, oxygen, carbon, who knows? That was today's science lesson. Number 4. New York taxis. Okay, they always get a bad rap, but lately I've found myself to have been rescued from non-showing Ubers or Lyfts by very nice cab drivers. Also, I don't know about you, but I've noticed that these apps, both of those that I just mentioned, leave a lot to be desired lately. You'll see that your driver is 2 minutes away, and then in 2 minutes, he's 2 minutes away. And in 7 minutes, he's 2 minutes away, but that's not enough time to cancel without getting charged. It's stressful for me. So I like a yellow cab from time to time. And number 5, handkerchiefs. I do prefer to carry a clean cotton handkerchief to stuffing my pockets with Kleenex. And I think that a washable hanky is probably preferable to the environment, but who knows? And also, where did these hankies come from that I have? I don't remember buying them. Did my grandma come back from wherever she is and put them in my dresser? I know I bought one in Japan, because in Japan, department stores have, get this, a handkerchief department, because they love their hankies. If I needed to buy a new handkerchief, I don't know where I would go in America other than a men's store, which have men's size really big and really thick and not beautifully embroidered handkerchiefs. That concludes the historical portion of this podcast. Coming up, the wonderfully observant Jami Attenberg talks about writing, her dog Sydney, and her life in New Orleans. We'll be right back. Jami Attenberg is in the studio as we speak, and I just said to her, it's funny we haven't met before, but she didn't agree with that. But okay, it doesn't matter.
I was in Brooklyn.
You were in Brooklyn or in Buffalo.
That's where I grew up, Buffalo Grove, Illinois.
You were in Buffalo Grove, and I was just at bookstore. I was at the Water Tower Place bookstore in Chicago.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
great mall.
Great mall. One of my first, actually, that I visited. Not that I did anything or had any connection to. But your new novel, All This Could Be Yours, is fantastic. It was such great companionship for me last week. Honestly, now this is a novel that weaves together the very disparate threads of a dysfunctional family. And I almost don't like the term dysfunctional family because it's a very easy thing to call any family. It's like saying I'm depressed when you mean I'm in a bad mood, or it's using a term of art that is used carelessly by a lot of people. In this case, the dysfunction is real. People aren't speaking to one another. And this family, for no good reason, lives in New Orleans. But the good reason is that you relocated yourself from Williamsburg, Brooklyn, home of hipsters,
yes,
to New Orleans 5 years ago.
For February will be 4 that I'm there full time.
What was that about? Tell me, because I find New Orleans a very tricky place, and I met last time I was there a lot of people who said, I have no family connections here, no job connections. This place just made me happy.
Yeah, it's true. It was the place that made me happy. I lived in New York City I've been saying for like 2 weeks that I lived there for 18 years in every single interview. And then it was pointed out to me that it was maybe 16 years instead. But I lived in New York City for a really long time, and I came into my own as a writer here. And it's a really hard place to be a working artist. And I had sort of like arrived at as far as I'm like super good with like where my career is at. Like I just put out a book every 2 years. I'm really productive. And I was like, I will never get ahead in my life if I stay in New York.
Meaning
ever.
Ahead of the curve financially
or
professionally?
Financially, for sure. Professionally, I can do what I do anywhere.
Anywhere.
So
yeah.
that wasn't my first part of it, but it was definitely part of it. And then also I went there, I think it's been 7 or 8 years that I went there every single winter. And I was always going to different places for months at a time to do work and to get out of New York. And that was, and looking for the next, I always thought I would never spend the rest of my life in New York. 16 years was quite surprising to me. And so then I finally ended up in New Orleans. I had been there before, but it was just the right time and the right place. And I met a lot of really nice people, and I kept going back there, and it was my happy place. And then I thought, I can do what I do from anywhere. And I have a really good team here. I have a really good publisher, and I don't need to be here anymore. And what happens if I go to my happy place and make that my permanent home? And I do not regret it. And having been back I've certainly been back to New York more than once, but like this past week, I've just been like racing around, and I'm like, once you leave New York, it's very hard to step back into it. Like I love it. I thrive off of it. But also like I need, I did an interview before this, and I took a 5-minute nap in the lobby of iHeartRadio. Like I was like, oh, it's so exhausting.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
It is hard. And it also has changed so much in the last 4 years since you've been gone.
So much.
I mean, you drive around the city and you see,
Williamsburg.
Oh yeah.
Bedford Avenue. It's a shopping mall. It's kind of it's really crazy. I mean,
all of New York is a shopping mall.
It's very It's all still like appealing and dazzling in its way, but it's much different, But everyone says that. But every generation says, "Oh, you should have seen New York 10 years ago."
But you were in New York 10 years ago,
And I'm that generation.
Yeah, no, but also I feel like. Well, for example, yesterday I read that the City Bakery Cafe closed.
I know.
And someone on Facebook said, now New York is just more and more like Cleveland. I mean, the fact is, it's the same shops anywhere. There is less of a neighborhood feel anymore. New York used to be a city of districts and neighborhoods that had distinct populations. No longer.
And frankly, I bet Cleveland has a real neighborhood feel to it. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't even judge Cleveland on that,
Exactly right. But going back to New Orleans as a character in your novel, All This Could Be Yours. Number one, the heat and the stickiness and the humidity of the novel as you describe the city, which you do beautifully, almost made my hair frizz. I mean, it was that vivid. Jami, it is a wonder to me after reading the novel and having my hair frizz while reading it, and having been to New Orleans many times, that it's such a winning place. Could you just explain that? Because the last time I was there, it was September. It was so brutally hot that there were outdoor air conditioners at the hotels. Yeah. There are outdoor air conditioners.
It's just the same thing as like me saying when I leave New York and I come back to it, it's hard to walk into it. But when you walk into New Orleans on one of those very hot days, you don't know how you could possibly survive an entire summer. And I've now done 3 summers there. And you sort of, I get into it. I kind of get into it. Also, the humidity is very good for my hair. So I really now that I've been out of here, I'm like, oh, where did my hair go? I miss my New Orleans hair. But in fact, in the summer, there aren't as many tourists there, and it really starts to become the city that its real self. Its real self, and I find it really interesting and fascinating. It is way too hot, and there's not much we can. This is what's going on. You have to just sort of be into it. But I don't know. I like it. I get very passionate about it.
You also sort of suggest, because the family at the center of this novel, the Tuckmans, or do you pronounce it differently?
Tuckmans is right.
The Tuckmans sort of respond, or at least Barbara, the matriarch, is very affected by the heat and very affected as she walks. She's one of these women who just dreams of being thin, and that's important to her, and she wants to get her steps in. And as she's doing her steps and counting her steps and maybe checking her pulse and wearing diamonds on every finger, she is somehow, I feel, motivated by the heat, which she doesn't like. She wants to go back to Connecticut, where they're from, and
she's cold in the bones.
She's cold in the bones.
She likes it, and she wants to stay cold in the bones. She's not. So New Orleans isn't for her. Listen, it's kind of a trick of it. Like I'm writing about a city that has been documented a million times, especially in film and television, and people have really specific ideas about it. And so the trick of it was like invent a character who doesn't like it there. Yeah. So I can sort of show all of these things that are like I sent her to a crawfish boil, and she thinks it's the grossest thing she's ever seen, when of course crawfish boil is a wonderful, joyful experience where you share food with your community,
Right.
And so that was part of the trick of it, was just like being able to show things through her eyes with a kind of she's a wry, gimlet-eyed kind of character anyway. But she's definitely the person who just, if you don't like it, if you can't get, nobody likes the heat.
Right.
Really genuinely likes the heat, but she can't really, if you can't get past certain things, then you probably shouldn't live there. So she's in exile from Connecticut.
And she was ambushed. She didn't know she was going to have to live there.
Yes, right.
She's there against her will. Each character in the novel is very well-rounded. I understand them. I didn't understand Gary at first, and then I did. I don't want to give the story away, but how do you describe it in a brief way?
My brief way is that it's about a very bad rich man who is bad in all the bad rich man ways, and he has a heart attack within the first 2 pages of the book, and I really just was not super interested in him, so I put him in a coma right away. Like I'm interested enough in him that he's a character in the book, but he's not. I didn't really want to hear from him too much.
You didn't want to hear from him, but yet
you learn about him.
You learn a lot about him, because a lot of what is going on in the book has to do with what he did.
What I did
Bad
was
things.
I took away his
His agency,
his close
within
third person perspective,
Yeah.
and so we don't ever hear his side of things, because I feel like all we do is hear about the side of things from this man. So I was like, I'm done with that. I want to like change the conversation about it. And so I always have strong female protagonists, and I'm much more interested in complicated women than I am in these complicated men. So he's in the coma. He has various family members. He has a wife, Barbara. He has a daughter, Alex. He has a son, Gary. He has a daughter-in-law, Twyla. And all of them either are going to gather around his bedside or not gather around his bedside, but he's on his deathbed, and they're coming to terms with who he was and how he impacted their life. And that was what I was interested in, is the impact of this kind of man, this toxic male. I'm less interested in what he did, but just sort of how that impact rolls out, and how children grow up, and how spouses react to it, and what kind of damage he does. And then ultimately, not that book offers a solution necessarily, but sort of how do we move on from that?
Well, and that was so skillfully done. I just have to tell you.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say.
And no, it's the ending is actually extremely satisfying.
Oh, good. Yeah.
At least it is to this reader.
Yeah.
And I'll be interested in the other readers who discover this wonderful book through the podcast, and they can write in on our website at lisabirnbach.com and tell me if they are satisfied by the ending. Also, you very skillfully weave a thread from the beginning with the EMT.
Yeah. All the way to the end.
All the way to the end.
Was
and you didn't do it in a way that I saw coming. So that was wonderful.
There's a lot of long cons in this book. There's a lot of like little voices that pop up and are kind of. And I didn't know. I knew a lot going in, but I also, when I was writing that first draft, all these little voices popped up and were like, "Well, you're going to have to include us too." And I just listen. I just listen to them and let them, and then figure out. Sometimes it's really clear, and sometimes I think, well, maybe I'll figure out what to do with them later. And most of them had a reason for being there, fortunately.
Jami, did you have a seance at which you gathered this family? Did you? How did you plan this novel? Tell me really your process.
I heard, so the 6th chapter in the book, which is 2 women, Alex and her sister-in-law Twyla, sitting on the roof of a hotel.
Mm-hmm. Which probably had air conditioning.
It was the Roosevelt in my mind. Yes. They are sitting around talking about this dying man. I knew right away there was a dying man, and that nobody liked him. Right away, and that one person was feeling very strongly about it, and the other person, at least seemingly, was feeling not as strongly about this person dying. And I knew they were going to talk about family secrets, and I knew that there was a wife who the daughter wanted to get the secrets out of, and that's 4 characters right there, and that's in like 2 paragraphs, and I was
wait,
yeah.
What do you mean you saw them or heard them or knew they would be on the roof of the Roosevelt Hotel?
I saw 2 people on the hotel.
No, wait, stop.
I don't know.
Did you say to yourself, today I'm going to start a new book?
Mm-mm. I was driving and I heard a voice in my head. I know, it's so weird. It's such a weirdo thing whenever I talk about it.
I love that.
That's how it is. And so I just hear it, and I just very recently heard something like another voice for another book that I was like, oh, I probably will write that someday.
And how do you concretize that? Do you start writing immediately when you hear it?
If I'm driving, I will like pull over and like send a little email or something to myself, or write in a notebook. I mean, it has to be the right time for me to be writing. Like right now, like when I got that idea the other day, I was like, well, that's great, except I'm on book tour, so this ain't getting written. So I just wrote a little note to myself, and I wrote down, I had the title too, and so I put it in a little sticky note on my computer or whatever, and then I was like, all right, well, we'll just like hold off on that.
So when you next go back home, and
yes.
when your tour's over, you get a very long tour, I noticed.
Yeah.
You can...
Well, maybe in like a year, because I have an essay collection that I'm working on, so that everything's kind of on hold. But it's good to have a book that you can cheat on one
with
book
another book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just kind of, so here's the thing is like my whole life is really about writing these books. Like I don't teach really that much and I don't have a kid. I have just my dog is my child. And I take this job very seriously, and this is what I do, and I get up and I do it 5 days a week when I'm actually in the writing mode. And so when you decide when you decide to open yourself up to that, and you figure out that like I'm good at actually being productive, like it's a real skill that I have that I can put out a book every 2 years. Once you decide that and you give yourself over to it and you trust yourself, then these things show up and you know what to do with them when they show up, and you value them when they show up.
Well, you know which voices to honor and which you can ignore.
Yes.
Do you hear things that you do decide to discard?
So I have, usually what I do at the very beginning of process is I am writing 2 books at the same time when I'm not sure yet what my next, like this essay collection, I've written a proposal for it, like I know this is the next thing I'm going to do. But usually what I do, and actually this essay collection was part of me writing it against another book, and then one of them gets thrown away. But there's something I'm working out when I'm doing it, and I don't know what it is necessarily, but usually it's all part of the process. Writing 2 books at the same time is all part of the process, and sometimes I just get like funny titles or concepts, and I think that would be funny, and then I don't do anything. I have like a running list of titles, and I never use them. And in fact, one of my titles, which was like the ultimate title, which is Cheat Day, was going to be great. And for years, I was like, put it on the back burner, but I was like, it's like my safety school. Do you know what I'm saying? Right. And then somebody up and it sold a book. And now she's like, we're like internet friends, but I saw the announcement. I was like, you.
How dare you?
No. I was so happy for her because she's like young. I call her young me because I'm like, she did it. She like found the same, like there's some sort of like in tune thing going on there. She lives in Brooklyn, and it'll come out, I guess, in a year or something. I'm like, I can't wait. Give it to me. I'm going to blurb it. Like it's the most genius book idea ever, you know. But so sometimes they sit there long enough and they go away. But I don't know. I just enjoy generating ideas.
When I interviewed Neil Young once a long time ago, his process sounded a little bit like yours. He said he heard lyrics and music in his head. But he was a little superstitious. He could not write anything down until he heard the whole thing.
Yes. Oh, that's interesting.
And once he was so excited, he wrote down, I don't know, the first few bars of a song.
And it went away.
Sure. He just couldn't finish it. And I believe that real artists do contrive.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah. And I think
make it show up. I just don't know how to do that, but I'm hoping one day it'll happen to me too.
Sometimes when I'm like writing and I'm in a scene and I close my eyes and I think I put myself in the room, like I can see inside the room, and that's like incredible.
Wow.
It's a really fun experience. That's the other thing about writing is that a lot of people have complicated relationships with their writing where they love having written. They don't enjoy the process. Whereas I really love the process. There's always some bumps along the way, but for the most part, when I have a good day of writing, then I'm the happiest person. It's like the same as like working out for 2 hours or something like that. Like you just get an incredible rush off of it. And I just like love feeling playful with that.
How many hours a day is your usual work day?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I get up at 6 usually, but part of the process is like I walk my dog for an hour and I read for an hour and then I'll handwrite. I'm usually done by like 3 in the afternoon, but that also includes like any business that I have to do for my book, like in terms of publishing, things like that. But I'm usually, I mean, I feel like I put in like a full day. It's an 8-hour day. I mean, not all of it is writing, scribbling, but I sit my butt at the desk and I do the work.
And you do it by hand?
I do it by hand in the morning and then I type it up in the afternoon. And it's 1,000 words a day.
Oh, so that's 4 pages of typescript?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So I know, I don't count the words when I'm handwriting them. But I have a general idea at this point, like how much I need to handwrite in order to make it to, I mean, I might handwrite 500 words, but leave enough blank, like, oh, just go long here. kind of thing. And then because I just find when you handwrite that it doesn't have to be perfect. And that's where like experiments happen and I'm much more inventive. Whereas when I type it into the computer, I can still experiment, but it feels like it has to be perfect.
For me, the computer doesn't... when I write, and of course I write nonfiction, but when I write, I find that the flow can be interrupted by the knowledge, the flickering cursor knowledge that something could be improved right then and there.
And the underline.
Right.
It makes me crazy. And everyone has said to me, you can turn the underline off. And I'm like, you're so smart. Congratulations. I can turn the underline off. But psychologically, the underline is still there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. As a matter of fact, a number of years ago, I bought a very primitive electric typewriter because that was still enough of a kind of spree with my head that I didn't stop and spell and
you just kind of went with it. But anyway, generationally now it's all different. But then I was talking to someone the other day and they said that I thought, they're all just like composing online, but they were talking about tablets where you can handwrite and then it translates it into.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those.
I was like, I guess that's super efficient. I'm like, it feels like a cheat to me. Like there's something about
living with your words.
Yeah, and moving it and typing it and thinking about it and perfecting it. I think it's all, but whatever. I mean, every generation is going to be
a little different.
Different, yeah.
Do you make a change between the morning and the afternoon sometimes? Do you tweak in that first type version?
Sure. Yeah. I'm definitely like, it's almost like it's a draft 1.5 when I'm done with an entire draft.
And how many drafts typically do you write?
I think I do. What I do is 100 pages, and then I usually go back and look at what I have and do another version of it, and then I send that to my agent. So he's probably getting like a draft 3 or something like that of the first 100. And then I'll do, and then probably what gets to my editor is like a draft 4, and then I'll have to do 2 more drafts after that with her, and then there's the copy edit. So I think sure by the end it's like 7 drafts, but then it all starts to, get muddled together because draft 7 is far different than draft 4 in terms of what I have to do to make it work.
Do you find that you love your novel that you're working on more than any of the prior ones? Do you obviously, and it has to be an emotional experience writing fiction. You are nurturing a vision that you have. You're nurturing maybe a moral that you want to convey, or righting a wrong in some way.
Yeah. I mean, I love this one because, I do love them all. I'm doing something structurally different with all of my books. So each book feels different than the last. So that is like its own kind of challenge. This one is probably, all my books are political, but I would say this one is like, has the most authorial voice, like where I'm stepping in and giving like a little bit more commentary than I usually. I had to sort of decide that I wanted to do that because I, in general, just like my characters to speak for themselves and let them do their thing. And my last book was first person, so I just let her do whatever she wanted to do. But in this instance, it sort of felt warranted, or I just had something to say and I wanted to do it. But I felt weird about it, and then I was like, whatever, it's your book.
So, Jami, this book is just published. And it feels of the moment. It feels like you must have taken the last red mark off a week ago. It does feel in the feelings that Alex and the 2 grandchildren have about life under Trump, who you don't mention, but it's all very suggested.
I started it in 2017. In the fall of 2017. And then I finished it in, the final copy edits in January of this year. And we sort of went back and forth on when it was going to get published. And I said, I really think it should be a fall 2019 book. I didn't think it would be, it just made sense for it to be a fall 2019 book in my eyes. Ultimately, I don't get to choose those things. My publisher gets to choose those things, but I made a push for it, and I said, I can get this done in that time. And I just worked really, really hard, and I was really fast, and I wanted it. It's a post-election novel for sure. It's, and And so that's why it feels that way, because we've almost been trapped also in this insane like timeline since 2016 that it sort of can just feel like right now, or it could feel like a year. I mean, it was really set like last year, but it truly does not feel that different.
No, it doesn't at all. It doesn't at all. And when you go on these very exhaustive and exhausting book tours, and I think this would be a good time to describe a book tour.
Yeah.
There is, of course, by now you have a legion of fans, but at the same time, you could be doing your big book signing the night of the Democratic debate, or you could be, I once was stuck in a bookstore in Dallas the day of the UT-Oklahoma game where there was no one in the bookstore.
Yes.
So those episodes sort of make you humble.
Yes.
And those episodes also, you know, the glamour of the book tour is not so glamorous.
No, I agree. I mean, the biggest hindrance for me has for my last tour was, one, I was snowstorms everywhere I went, and the book came out in March, and I thought it's gonna be great. March is fine. Snowstorms everywhere.
Remember spring? We used to have something called Spring in March.
It was kind of a bummer in that way. And then like the flip side of was I read in Seattle, and they're like, it's our first nice day that we've had in so long, and nobody came to that one. So, but on the East Coast, people tend to come because I've lived here a long time, and it's, you know, family comes and friends come and friends who are family, that kind of thing. And then also I found, like, just really weirdly, when my last book came out, All Grown Up, that it came out in spring of 2017, and everyone was so shell-shocked from the election that I thought, I mean, I didn't know who was going to win, but I definitely was writing from the perspective of, and our next president will be, and this will be a welcome novel. And then, like, when it came out, I mean, it did totally fine, but it was like, it was just almost so weird because we were like, who is this? It was like about like a strong, but kind of messed up single woman. And it was like, almost like that's the least of our problems, like that no one's taking this single woman seriously when we have so many other things going on. So, so that was kind of a tricky book to put out.
But it's not just the timing of the book and finding its audience. It's about the drain of...
It's really exhausting, yes.
Your emotions, don't you think? And some people at book signings I've had, there's often a very strange person who...
Asks weird questions.
Weird questions.
Almost always a man.
And won't leave you when you're trying to leave the bookstore. Or people who pick up your book in full view of you.
And then put it back down again.
And put it back down.
Yes, there's so
that
many
hurts.
things.
And then you get preempted on a TV or radio show because of something else going on, or you get only 5 minutes. You thought you'd have 20.
But don't you feel I feel very zen about it. I mean, it's the beginning of the tour, but I feel a little like, not numb, but just like ready for it, because I've done 7 book tours in 13 years, so I'm just like, whatever happens is. I mean, I already have like figured out which events. Like, I'm like, I don't think anyone's coming to that one. I had an event in D.C. this weekend, and I think 8 people came. It was like a lunch. It was like a paid luncheon. It was lovely, but I was like, let's hope this is the only time only 8 people show up. Like, and whereas tonight I know like it will be tons and tons of people in New York City, so. I sort of focus on the things that are going to be amazing. My parents are throwing an event for me at their temple in Florida, which will be like hundreds of people. It will be epic, and it will please my parents to no end. So that's near the end of the tour, and then the day after that I go and I do Judy Blume's bookstore in Key West. I don't know if you've ever been to that one.
No, I didn't know she had one.
She has a bookstore there. I've done it once before, and it's wonderful, and you get to hang out with Judy, and it's like you're like, I have arrived. And my whole life is perfect because I know Judy for just like a second.
Yeah.
So I look forward to those things, and then the other stuff that's in the middle, if it doesn't work out, I don't know.
Who cares?
I guess who cares? Like, I
care. I already hurt. I hurt for anybody going on a book tour. I do.
I don't want to lie, but I just like, I don't know. I think it's going to be, I feel like it's fine.
Well, look, It's a really wonderful book. I guess I've said that about 5 times already, but I don't feel that way about every novel that I read. Some novels I read and I feel jealous or angry or peevish about the author, but you've done the work. You've really, this is a wonderful work that
Thank you.
That I know you are proud of producing. I love the cover, by the way.
So good. Yeah, it's
cover
really good.
Is so good.
I was like, there will be no woman on this cover.
Right.
Like, it's not lady fiction. I mean, it's definitely for women, but I was like, do not put me in the box.
Okay, now
Do you want to talk about that?
I'll argue with you about that. Is this lady fiction? It's not lady fiction. Your fans are probably mostly women, but this is a muscular book.
Yes, I know. So I wanted to make sure that it was reaching. We were just talking about this in the car, that you sometimes, if you have a lady in the cover, it means most men are not going to pick it up, right?
Correct.
Like, that's a signal. So
unless she's a Vargas girl,
right?
Maybe,
right,
yeah.
right. Or some sort of historical kind of thing, maybe too. But and I've seen it, and I actually think men should read all of my books and that they would enjoy and get something out of all of my books. And but with this one, I definitely insisted. I was like, I want everyone to read this book. I want to make sure. And so this is really, it is like a very, not necessarily masculine, but it's a substantial cover. It definitely says something. It definitely says, don't be afraid, men.
It says, yes, it says, if you're strong enough,
right,
you can open this.
Yes, right.
It does.
That's good.
And
I'm going to take you with me wherever I go.
Yes, absolutely. And also it says, who wears this color orange? Maybe people in jail.
Yes. Yeah, right. Yeah, I think so. Because orange is the new black color, too.
Yeah. No, you've got a lot of bases covered here.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, I just think that sometimes you're on a book tour. Well, you never start one with low hopes. You start it with high hopes. And then I would find, my first book tour was in 1980 when it was all different.
I'm sure.
And you were in high school in Buffalo City and Buffalo Grove, Illinois.
Yeah.
And I have to say, you want people to like you.
Yes.
And I didn't have an escort. My publisher didn't do that, and I didn't know how to drive because I was a native of Manhattan whose family didn't own a car. So it was really hard to get around.
Yes.
And also,
I'm just picturing you on a street corner with your suitcase,
with the
waving.
Wait, hold on. That suitcase wasn't on wheels in 1980 either.
Yeah. Oh.
As I was trying to hail a cab and didn't know if the radio station was closer to the airport or what.
Young Lisa.
I know.
Out in the woods.
Out by herself in a land of predators and people wearing nylon. It wasn't good. But you know what? We get through it. My first book tour, all my first book tours were like me in a car driving cross country by myself. Like, I was such a road warrior. My dad was a traveling salesman, so I inherited like that, get out there. And my parents also owned a sewing store, so I consider myself a small business operator myself. So wait, so you drove because anybody growing up in America in most places would drive. And did you sew also?
No, that was my one stupid punk rock rebellion. I was like, I'm not going to learn how to sew. And now I'm like, I wish I knew how to sew.
Well,
I mean, I could like sew a button.
You could learn now.
I could sew now. It's too late. I already know everything that I like, all my skills. And now, I mean, not that you
know what you are? You're like Athena. You came out of your parents' forehead fully formed, as some people do, and and now you write a book every 2 years and go on a book tour every 2 years.
Yes, I'm a machine.
You're a machine.
No, but I
do you have time for fun?
No, but I moved. To return to the beginning of the conversation, then I moved to New Orleans. So like I was a machine.
But you're still a machine.
It's true, but I'm a much happier machine
because your hair is better.
My hair is better.
That always helps.
And I like have a backyard, and it's so silly, but like my dog, sits in the backyard, and my desk looks out of the backyard, and I see my little happy dog in the sunshine, and it makes me really happy.
Okay.
Yeah. So
all kudos to you, my new friend. I think it sounds like a dream life, honestly. But but do you
Everyone
have time
has
for
their
fun?
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I live in like one of the most fun places in the world.
So do you drink heavily?
No, I don't drink heavily.
Do you drink?
But I do drink. But I just took 2 months off this summer from
Of drinking? And how was that?
It was really good. You can drink your way. You can in New Orleans. It's like you either drink your way through the summer or you go into hibernation. And I went into hibernation and worked on my next book proposal because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do anything this fall.
So wait. So for fun, you didn't drink? Okay. That's it. We're going to your 5 things. I can't relate now.
No, I love drinking. No, I love drinking. Don't get me wrong.
But do you have some vices or just some
I have
guilty
lots
pleasures?
I used to listen. I lived in New York City in Brooklyn and like moved to New York in '98, and so I was in my late 20s in '98, and I had a very good time for a long time, and then I stopped doing a lot of the things that I used to do.
Gotcha.
And now I just drink, and even still, I love to drink. But
I am not saying you have to drink.
But
a lot of fine people don't drink.
But I'm just approaching, like fully approaching middle age, and I like getting up and I like sleeping through the night. And if I drink, I don't get to sleep through the night.
No, it's sensible.
So, but I love a martini.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I needed.
Okay.
Jami Attenberg, your 5 things that get you through your life, your week, your day, however you want to. Okay. Number 1.
So obvious. Dog parks, but I do like to take my dog to a dog park. But then beyond that, because I'm not doing as much anymore, but when I used to drive back and forth from New York or drive anywhere out of the city, it's fun to stop in dog parks in other people's communities because then you get to chat with people in other places and you get to look at cute dogs wherever you go. And I don't know, it's just a good way to get out of the house too. My dog doesn't even really like dog parks that much. It's more for me.
It's more for you.
He would just be happy staying at home and hanging out with me.
What's his name?
Sydney.
Sid That's
Vicious.
Yeah. And what breed is he?
He's a puggle. He's named after dead grandfather. No, actually, he's Sidney Morris, so it's both the dead grandfathers, Jewish grandfathers.
The dead grandfathers.
Sidney Morris Attenberg, yeah.
Ah, that's so cute. Number 2.
I'm trying to talk about my dog in every interview I do. My local radio station for the blind, which I love.
Wait, hold it.
Yeah.
Only blind people are supposed to listen to it?
No, it's people read. I don't know, I guess because they don't have it in New York, but it's people who read. Like
stories for the blind.
Like they read,
like
but they also read the newspaper.
They do.
They read the newspaper, and that radio station exists. I mean, it's for people. It's for the blind to hear people read these stories to them
that they can't read themselves.
That they can, or they could, but it's different. Yeah. And so I don't know how many actually. I'm fascinated with these. I know I keep wanting to write a letter of recommendation for it because I love it so much, and I get to do interviews. I'm going to do an interview for like there next week, and
you're
I'm
probably
so
more excited about that one. Than,
I'm very excited.
Let's say this one.
Well, I learned so much. I learned because they do a lot of stuff about New Orleans and Louisiana that I would never have heard of. Like they just read local articles and from local texts and stuff like that. And so I learned about nutria, which is there's an appearance of it in the book.
There is an appearance.
It's like a local. I mean, I've seen them before.
Rodent.
It's a rodent, but it's like big. It's like a hamster rodent rat thing, and it's destroying like all the wildlife and all this kind of stuff in Louisiana. And so I remember like one day just pulling over to the side of the road and listening to this random person read about nutria, and I was like, that's going in the book.
No, is WRBH your local radio station?
Yes.
Does it broadcast all 24 hours?
I think you can listen to it. Yeah, and I think you can listen to it
online.
I'm going to say online. I hope we got those call letters right. I think we did.
Okay.
But anyway,
you double check.
You could just Google Radio Station for the Blind New Orleans and find it. Yeah. It's great. It's great.
Do you think other cities have that?
I'm sure some do, but they might not have a dedicated station. They might have like a dedicated hour or something like that. But it's very cool. Yeah. So, and it's just fun to listen to it when you're driving.
And the accent must be good.
It's very good.
Yeah.
It's on my 5 things.
Right. Okay, number 3.
I have the Alexandria, the AOC red, as I call it, the Stila Beso. I may be pronouncing Beso, which is just the red lipstick that she wore when she first everyone was paying attention to her, and like I ordered it because like every other fool went to
stop it.
Yeah, but I love it. But it's a lot. It is a lot of lipstick because it's just a sticky red on your lips, and you can't get it off ever, except one little tiny spot that haunts you for the rest of the day. And I sometimes wear it at home when I'm just like at home by myself, and I'm like, I'm just going to look glamorous for myself. So I like that one.
I like that. Now wait, we have to stop here. The red lipstick.
Yeah.
There's something that's going on in this world right now that I object to.
Okay.
I wore a red lip. I wore a nude lip. Have you heard people say things like that?
What?
I wore a lip.
Oh.
I wore a bold lip. I wore a nude lip.
I don't think we're saying it down in New Orleans.
Oh.
Maybe they're saying it
Maybe
in
I'll
the fashion
move then.
magazines.
Maybe I'll move.
Yes, it offends you.
I don't like it. A bold lip. A statement necklace.
I might type it, but I wouldn't say it out loud.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Next. Number 4.
Crystal hot sauce.
That's a brand of hot sauce
In Louisiana. That I recommend. And it's, I've just become more invested in hot sauces in general.
Well,
since I moved
as
down
you
there.
must.
So it's just, So
I have a friend named Peggy who lives in New York who's from New Orleans, and she has a cabinet built in her kitchen for her collection of hot sauces, of miniature hot sauces. She must have hundreds of them.
their bottles are really cute.
They are.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's good. It's gratifying.
Good. Okay. And number 5.
A weed whacker.
I get it.
I love it. It's like such a great break from. It's
Writing.
not like doing laundry. It's not like doing dishes. It's getting you outside of the house. I just go and do it for 10 minutes. I think about whatever I need to think about.
Does Sid come with you?
Sid, yeah, he's sitting out in the backyard with me.
Yeah, he's sitting out there while you whack.
He likes it. He prefers it if I'm out there with him, hanging out with him, and he gets excited, to have me join him. He considers the backyard his room.
Right.
So,
Well, so do you.
Yeah, but I have not had a weed whacker ever in my entire life. I've never owned a weed whacker.
Most people in Brooklyn don't have weed whackers.
But even in the
think.
Midwest, we just mowed our lawns, I think.
Oh.
So this is my first time, and I don't have a big yard. I have a small yard, so it's just, instead of getting a lawnmower, you just get the weed whacker. But I enjoy it very much. Yeah, I like it when I feel a little rattled afterwards.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay, last thing, muffalata, po' boy.
Yes.
Crawfish boil. What's your favorite New Orleans food thing? And I'm asking you this really for Jimmy, our engineer, who is an aficionado
Of New Orleans food or food in general?
of food.
So I like my go-to would be a fried oyster or po' boy. I love, it's not the same experience, but a barbecue shrimp po' boy is actually more like a bunch of, like the oyster po' boy you can pick up and put in your mouth and eat it. The barbecue shrimp po' boy tends to be served like on a platter, and it's like just like this garlicky, buttery sauce, and then you kind of dip the bread in the sauce, and it's like the greatest thing you've ever had in your entire life. But I can only eat like once or twice a year this thing, but I do really love it.
And do you put Crystal hot sauce on it?
You put Crystal hot sauce on it. I would say a good raw dozen Gulf oysters is going to make you pretty happy. It's something that I recommend when I have people flying in. I try to take them to a meat, because oysters are good, full of zinc, so it's good after a flight. I could talk about this forever, but I would say fried oyster, po' boy, barbecue, shrimp, po' boy, oysters.
On that note, I want to thank you and hope I'll see you in 2 years when you're on your next tour.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to 5 Things That Make Life Better with me, Lisa Birnbach. My guest this week has been Jami Attenberg, author of All This Could Be Yours, published by Houghton, Mifflin, Harcourt. You can follow Jami on her website at jamiattenberg.com or on Twitter at Jami Attenberg. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play Music, YouTube, and iHeartRadio, or wherever else you might find your podcasts. My blog is at lisabirnbach.com, where you'll find links and photos relating to everything in the program. This podcast is produced in New York City by thefieldtv.com. My engineer is Jimmy Regan. My team is Espresso Arucci, Michael Port, Boko Haft, Sam Haft. Until next week, stay dry and act natural. Bye-bye.
That was 5 Things with Lisa Birnbach. New episodes every Friday, if she remembers.